Hello, Bob. How are you doing?
I'm good, Shawn. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm excited to see everybody who's joining us today from YouTube and from Facebook. So, hi, everybody from Facebook world and YouTube world. We're so glad you guys are joining, and tell us where you're from and what career you're working in, because this is an Exploring the Marketplace live where we answer questions with you guys. And we're also going to be talking about some of the challenges from people who view us and connect to us just like you. So, it's going to be really fun to talk today. Bob, what are you working on right now in life?
I'm working on legacy planning, Shawn.
That's awesome.
I've been in my career for almost 45 years, and I'm thinking about legacy planning. Congress is about to pass a bill for capital gains tax, corporate tax, and estate tax. So we're just in the middle of all that, and it's so interesting and confusing all at the same time.
I know, it's so interesting, right? I've been like reading the proposals, and they keep changing day by day and minute by minute. So I'm like, I'm not going to read this till it's all done. It's too exhausting.
Right.
No, it's so honest. It's so funny. I feel like, Sheree just got done with a really cool photo shoot, which because Lauren came up, your wife, and came up and helped her. Lauren was a rock star. She came up and brought a whole truckload of more flowers and plants to beautify everything. And so Sheree did a photo shoot for a company called Duluth. That's going to be Better Homes and Gardens and Magnolia in the spring. So we worked on that for about a week. I feel like both of us are having back issues now because we lifted so much stuff.
I can't imagine the amount of work that you guys did.
And then trying to do normal life work too. I had so many projects and things that were, popping in for different installments this week. And so it was a really interesting time that I'm so glad her photo shoot's over, although I enjoyed it, so that we can move on.
The photos that you posted and that she posted on Dream Big Farm on Instagram,
Dream Big Urban Farm.
Dream Big Urban Farm. I knew I got most of it close. They're so beautiful.
Oh, it's like it felt like a magazine. That's like what she's built, what came out of her imagination or her heart. It feels so epic, especially because she's in her first 2 years of this. She's not a farm designer. She's not, this hasn't been her history in her career, but God awakened something in her. So to see the first major installment or second major installment, because we had it at our last house too, but to be so epic and beautiful and useful and functional, it's really cool. A lot of people are taking notice.
Yeah. I'm so excited to see when it finally comes out in the spring.
I know you'll read your Magnolia subscription magazine you get.
Yeah. Cover to cover, baby.
Cover to cover, just like you always do. Well, hello. We got a lot of people telling us where they're from. We have people from Austria, and there's Neil in Ohio. We have Insights with April Marie. I love that name. And Longview, Washington with Rose. And we have San Diego, California, the Diaz family. We don't know where that's at. San Diego, where are you at?
San Diego, I don't know where that's at. Oh yeah, I'm sitting here.
You're sitting in San Diego. Perfect. We got San Diego. You guys have like the best weather of all of California. It's like people in San Diego, there's probably more unchurched people there because it's already heaven on earth. It's awesome. Pasadena, California. Well, welcome everybody again. Please tell us what you're working on, what projects or what career you're in, just so we can know. It's fun to see just marketplace people and how we could all pray for each other, work together, which is awesome. Franklin, Massachusetts. I've never even heard of Franklin, Massachusetts. I've been up there quite a few times. That's awesome.
Franklin, Tennessee, but not Franklin,
Massachusetts. Of course, everyone knows Franklin, Tennessee. Arcadia, Louisiana. That's awesome. Sherry and Temple City. Hey, Heidi. Temple City's not far away. Well, we have a fun kind of conversation we want to have with you guys today. At the same time, if you guys have questions about the marketplace, if they're spiritual questions, we'd love to answer those as well at the end. So you can go ahead and start putting those questions in if you have them now about your career, about what God's doing in your marketplace. We'd love to talk about those. We just published a book called Wired to Hear that Bob and I wrote together, and it's about being wired to hear for your career, your place of influence in the marketplace. And I think that this is going to be a really useful book for a lot of you. So if you haven't got the book, please make sure to pick up a copy. And we have some even some sales coming up, Bob, with all of our materials coming up for Black Friday. We were just talking about it yesterday. Wow. So I'm excited about a Wired to Hear special that we're going to be doing as well. So it's good. Okay. Well, let's have a convo, Bob. I'm excited about what we're talking about today.
I know we've planned, we prepared so much for this. For it. I'm
some of our lives we prepare 5 minutes before, and some of our lives we know weeks in advance.
Yeah.
This particular one, I feel like I've been in conversation after conversation with people about who are growing in their career or in their business or their entrepreneurship, and they're growing so fast in some areas, but there's other areas that are in total deficit. And Bob, how do people deal with it when they're growing? Maybe they're a product-based business, so they've all of a sudden have all these new vendors, but they have to come up with the cash capital to actually create the product. Or maybe there's somebody who has something that's like a more of a like some of the ministries I've talked to, that they all of a sudden have so much demand on them, but they don't have the manpower to meet the demand, or whatever. So a lot of times it could be social capital, it could be or worker capital, that kind of thing. I've had talked to some of the entertainment industry people I'm friends with, and they have enough to keep them in the entertainment industry right now, but they and for like 3 to 6 months, but they can't look 2 or 3 years out. How do they plan for that? Which could be a deficit. Like those are big questions people have. Is like, you hit a level of success that requires more success, or you fail. And so, how do you handle that as a Christian?
Well, for me, this is the exact place where my faith has to come in.
Yeah.
This is where Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 for me: trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not into your own understanding, acknowledge him in all your ways, and he'll direct your paths. This is my life scripture, because we get into this place where it doesn't make sense, and we
Yeah.
have to have faith, and we're in a deficit. And we've just come through probably the biggest disruption that any of us will ever have been through in our lives. And now, as we've got some recovery coming and some, there's still a bunch of fear out there. So for me, it's faith, Shawn. It's
Yeah.
this is where the rubber meets the road for me, where Jesus died and hung on the cross for me, is in these practical things. Like, how do you operate your business? How do you have faith for cash flow? How do you have faith for human capital, for employees? How do you have faith for taking newer, bigger projects if you're afraid? And this is where kind of that juxtaposition between fear and faith comes in.
So true.
And what I've found is, like, in the last year and a half, Shawn, you and I have talked about this over and over again, is when we're looking here, we get fearful because we're hearing news reports, we're watching all these different things happen. And if our eyes aren't on Jesus, we're listening to these reports, and fear comes in. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and I think there's a lot of people who've been having dreams or a feeling from God that there's going to be a market correction soon. And sometimes when you receive a dream like that, it could be you see the stock market fail or the Bitcoin market fail, or you see something so drastic that you wake up and you have to process the human side of it, which is sometimes fear. Like, am I going to lose everything? Or are we going to lose everything? Is America going down? Is UK going down? Whatever. There's a lot of times that our natural man, when we have, even if it's a God dream, we have an imagination about what it could mean before we have truth or faith about what it could mean. And God doesn't give us those dreams without giving us solutions in them, or warning, or help. And I feel like a lot of people are having a sense in God that, whether it's the real estate market in America or whether it's the financial markets worldwide, that there's going to be some sort of correction. And, or some people are saying failure. I believe there's going to be a correction. And to me, I look at those seasons of, especially if you're building right now and you're like trying to keep up with growth, and then you have this impending situation that might be happening that some people are saying is impending doom over you. It creates a place that really steals that capacity of faith from you if you don't stay focused. And I look at, even, we've talked about in the Great Depression, how so many major companies emerged because they were ready when everybody else was failing to jump in. And a lot of our Christian companies that have legacy to them still today. I know I've met with 4 different families whose parents or great grandparents started in the Depression because God told them to, and they're now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And so there's these moments in time where even if the world's failing around us, God allows, it's Deuteronomy 8:18. He gives you the ability to produce resource and wealth of all types. There's something about that can happen regardless of where the world's at. And I feel like that's a real place of contending in faith that not everybody has the endurance for when they're going through so much survival.
I think one of the things that fear does is says, there's impending doom out there and there's going to be a correction. If you look at the history of, our country and markets, there's corrections every 10 years or so.
Yeah.
And we've been running in a bubble for so many years since the recession in 2007,
7
8
or
and
8. Yeah.
on. And I think If you look at the markets, if you look at real estate, if you look at even Bitcoin and gold and the commodities, everything is right around all-time highs. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, but look, I can look at that and say we have to be uh, in in line for a correction in the next few years. I don't know when it's going to be, but the whole thing is my eyes are not on a correction or on a pending doom. My eyes are on Jesus,
Yeah.
and I'm putting one step in front of the other and making the best decisions that I can make as I go, and
Yeah.
controlling the things that I can. I can't control a market correction. I can't. I can listen to advisors and be
Yeah.
positioned correctly, but for most of us, look, we're going to work every day. We have a job. We're trying to get raises and promotions, and these are the things that we focus on. Let our character, let our light shine before us. And of course, we have to be smart. We have to be smart with our personal budgets. We have to be smart with saving money. It's prudent to save money, every month, and try to gain a nest egg in case there's a correction that comes. But I
Yeah.
think being fearful about it, rather than employing the faith that we have in Jesus, is not the way we need to go. We need to trust the Lord. He's brought us this far. Why would he allow us to fail?
Well, and many of us have gone through a season where it feels like failure. Like I went through where I lost all of my net worth in 2007 and 8,
Mhm.
everything. Like I was just, and I remember being at the bottom and just still having peace, just going, I don't know
Right.
what I could have done. I don't know what I could have done to change this. I had no predictive energy. Wasn't wise enough. There was no one around me who was wise, who helped me to know this was going to happen. And not in a victim mentality to say that, but I'm just saying, like, if
Yeah.
God wanted me to never weather storms, he would have never put storms in front of me. And so I had to learn that he's given me the ability to rebuild and reproduce them where I left off last time. I can do it again. I can like grow again in my capacity. And so I went through, I have a lot of empathy for people who go through those times
Oh,
because
me
of being
too.
through one, almost being bankrupt, almost, having all of my property losses, all the things that I had to go through. Excuse me, it was really hard. But there's a TikTok series online right now where people will have that song "Never Enough" from The Greatest Showman. I don't know if you ever saw it with Hugh Jackman. It's a great song though. The song is epic, and they're kind of playing it in a playful way, where they'll play the song and then they pretend like they're singing the song, but then the text is why they work, like what they work for. It's like, I work this hard at my job, putting in way too many hours, more than everybody else, for my dogs to have a better life, or for, and it's always sarcastic. It's always like, so
Mhm.
that I can buy this cup of coffee every morning because I'm not getting a raise. It's like there's not necessarily a positive reason why they're working that hard. And you could just see it's like in this time where 50% of Americans specifically, and I'm sorry if you're not from America when I say this, yesterday, I think it was Forbes that put out 50% of Americans are considering a career change. It's
Mm.
historic. It's never happened in history. So because of COVID and because of the lockdowns and because of being at home, I know Australia is similar. I know there's a couple other countries that are similar. So who have the similar statistics. So if people no longer have the right motivation to work, then one thing that God could do, because he's given us, so you and I define this in our book really well, was the first thing he did to Adam and Eve is give them a job. And we're supposed to have great fulfillment in working with God. It's great fulfillment in our purpose. He created us for good works before time began, Ephesians 2:10. So I think if God is allowing us to, if we don't have fulfillment in what we're working on, and we don't have a vision for what we're working on, it's just to feed our dogs or eat a cup of coffee. We literally have to get that vision. So if there is a correction, we don't care. We're still powering through with the vision of God, and we're living in that faith. So though we might get, hit and we're not hammered by the hits that come. And so I just think about that TikTok. Some of you might have related to those TikToks where it's like, I work this hard. What is it really for in the first place? Is basically what the TikTok's saying. What is it for? Is it really worth working this hard for a company that doesn't value me, or for a place that can't be promoted, or because there's going to be a market correction? Is it worth it? And it really is when you have the vision of why you're working with God. It's totally different.
Mhm. Well, when we were thinking about this kind of topic always brings me to Ecclesiastes 3. And let me just read this. I'm going to read a couple of them, okay?
Do it.
This is about the seasons, but listen to this. A time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend. I love this one. A time to be silent and a time to speak. And I think we have to recognize in our own lives that we're living in these seasons, and God has meant us to be practical. And so if we take this portion of scripture, in verse 9, what do workers gain from their toil? Just what you were just talking about in the TikTok.
Yeah.
And I think why are we're serving God? We're meant to work. We're meant to provide for ourselves and our families. And I think that when we get to this place of recognizing that we need to trust in the Lord in these things, it's okay. Yes, there's so many things that are causing fear. We can get our eyes on vaccines or no vaccines. We can get our eyes on racism. We can get our eyes on, is the economy going to tank? Or the market's going to tank? Is there going to be a correction? But I think our eyes have to be on Christ for all these big things. And because we're not meant to be divisive, fear and love can't coexist.
Yeah.
And right now, in so many of our places, so many people we're talking to, they're being ruled by fear, and fear has to do with punishment.
When it goes back to, if you're growing in an area and you still have fear roots, or if you don't have, sometimes you don't even have ingenuity or entrepreneurship in it, that takes you further because your creativity is stumped because you get in fear, or you get into a place of like a lack or a poverty mindedness in one area. And it's like, if you're going to go forward, God's brought your provision in each area to go forward, and you have to be creative and strategic to look for those areas. I know for, someone I just talked to, she was saying, we're losing money right now because we sold our house and we have to pay massive capital gains, and no one told us about this. And so we, and I said, do you have any time still to invest that into another property? And she's like, well, we do, but we don't know where we want to go. And just that, and I talked to her about like what double-mindedness really is.
Yeah.
Not really like being confused about where to go because and it's just, she just was like, yeah, that's true. I do have that. Yeah, we need to make some decisions and not just wait for God to deliver us or bring us the God card, but actually make decisions out of being a son or a daughter that are good for our life and our family. That is spiritual rootedness, is to actually make decisions, not be paralyzed in fear, or that we're going to fail God somehow, or we're going to miss our opportunity because we didn't hear directly from God. But we're actually going to when we don't hear from God, that's our right as a son or a daughter to do the best thing we know how to do, and God will bless and honor that too. And I think that even having that as part of the perspective is really huge.
I agree. Like it's so interesting. In the last month, our company's sort of recovering from COVID, and I've been going to the office thinking, this used to be the best place to work, and now it feels like the worst place to work. People are isolated. People are still isolated. We have a big kind of bullpen area that we always used to be in. And so I was talking to some of our staff, and they were like, why aren't we out in the bullpen more? Why aren't we playing cornhole more? Why aren't we, playing darts and sitting around and talking to people like we used to? And I was like, yeah. And so we started.
That's awesome.
Just like that. We just started again. And all of a sudden, morale came up and productivity came up, and people were happy to be there again. And it was just a conversation about like, what has happened? And I think the fear of COVID has taken over, lots and lots of people personally, and especially in the workplace, where you used to have a culture that looked a certain way, and now the culture looks a different way.
Yeah.
And I think we need to get back to it.
It's so funny because we moved during COVID, and Sheree and I have just been now meeting our neighbors a year later. And we're meeting all of them. Like, we've met like everybody in the last 2 months, 3 months. And even yesterday we met another neighbor from down the street who has a boxer too, 1-year-old boxer. I love that puppy. And it's interesting because we were like, everyone's apologizing for, well, COVID, we didn't get to meet each other. Like, we're so glad to meet you now though. Here's my phone number. And we're still face to face. We're talking, giving cards to each other, like connecting. And it's such a thief what this generation has had to face through the pandemic. And I believe God wants to give us back time that we lost.
Yeah.
And he wants to give us back more, like double for our trouble is an old Pentecostal word that people used to say all the time. Double
It
for your
sounds
trouble.
that sounds Pentecostal.
Super Pentecostal, but I
Yeah.
really believe that for those who are walking with God and are saying, I'm going to divorce fear and marry
Mhm.
love and faith. Like if we could divorce fear right now and marry love and faith, I think God will give us double for what we've lost. And I feel like for us here, even our neighborhood, like there's something about being present as neighbors. And we found out that most of our neighbors are really amazing Christian people, like shockingly, because we live in LA, we moved north and from where we live in Studio City. And when we go back down to Studio City, people still don't look at each other in the eyes. They won't talk to you. If you're in the grocery store, they avoid you at all costs because you might give them disease. We moved to where we live up north now, and everyone's just like, "How are you? What's going on?
Mhm.
Should I wear a mask? I don't know if I should wear a mask. We're pretty far away." Anyways, like it's
Yeah.
just so sweet. Like they're just trying to be kind, trying to
Yeah.
be neighborly, which is really nice. And so we had to get reprogrammed moving up here to not be isolated. So I understand that.
It's so good. Well, we're to our listeners, we would love to answer questions. And we've got Will has given us some really great scriptures here. 1 John 4:18. That's
Tabitha, oh yeah, Tabitha asked a question too. She said, "Can you speak of the starter steps for stepping into faith steps, a vision, and how to address those foxes that come up, those little
mm,
things that steal?"
yeah.
Um, I think if you ask it more specifically, I mean, if it's entrepreneurship or business, I'm going to answer it that way, which is um, strategic planning, which Bob loves to. He brings up almost every call. Like, if you will strategically plan, then when foxes come up, you know what you're planning and you can replan again. But if you don't have a plan in the first place, of course, there's always areas that are unplanned. But if you don't have a plan in the first place, you're going to be in trouble. So if you're going to start a business around something like, again, a product line, and you don't have plans for uh, cash performance, a marketing plan, all these different areas, it's just happening, then you're going to feel like a victim to circumstances around you. So a lot of the foxes, quote unquote, that people, which is a reference to Song of Solomon, cats, little foxes that come up in the field and kind of destroy the crop. A lot of those things happen because we're not actually planning the field intelligently. And so get some help and get as much wisdom around you as you can
Mhm.
before you fully plan. Because for us, we brought Bob on because we had success in a number of areas that weren't even areas we were trying to grow into, that we were feeding while we were trying to grow into the areas that we felt called to. And so we had cash flow issues because we had so many new things we were doing to help meet
Mhm.
the demand of the people that we were reaching, which wasn't where we're aiming long term, but it was, we wanted to feed those who are in the crowd, so to speak, around us right now. And so we were doing all this stuff where we created product and all kinds of stuff for them. And then we had cash flow issues because the product wasn't being delivered instantly. It was over the next year of tours. And so it created cash flow issues. And Bob came in and was like, "Hey, let's do some planning here around all this again." And we didn't slow down, I think, the plan because we didn't think we were going to camp there so long. And so we had to actually regroup and go, okay, this is what we're doing. Let's really plan into it so that we can actually talk to our vendors and talk to our the resourcers and whatever, and just like create a flow that will actually work financially. So we're not going to go into credit card debt to do something that we shouldn't. It feels like 10 years ago, Bob.
I know it does. And Tabitha followed up with, the big plan, and then you break it down even more. Yes, within the big plan, you break it down even more. And but I have to tell you something. No matter how much you plan, no matter how much you sit around and put a beautiful strategic plan together and involve everybody in your life, there's going to be foxes that are going to come up. And so it's our response to those foxes that the only thing we could control, which is not letting fear direct us.
Yeah.
And in business, in the ministry, in in a job, things come up. We all can think about, oh, this came up, that came up, and all of a sudden our direction was altered because of something that came up. So we have to anticipate that moving forward in your job, moving forward in your business, moving forward in your ministry, things are going to come up. And the people who succeed are the people who are willing to adjust and shift based on whatever the new reality is. And over the last 2 years, we've heard of this new reality over and over and over again, and it's true. But we have to be willing to see what's happening. We have to be willing to ask the Lord
Yeah.
to handle it for us, and then be able to shift and move in faith, not fear.
Yeah. It's so funny because some of the foxes that come up are actually signs that you're going the right direction too. Like I just consulted with a company and they're in an industry that is being poo-pooed right now in the agricultural world because the people who started that industry were barbarians and they would destroy whole farms to get one kind of crop. And so now they've inherited those kinds of crops and they're doing it actually probably more so than most farm agricultural world. They're actually doing it with integrity. They're actually doing integrous farming for
Mhm.
it's called. It's like to do it the right way. And they have these incredible policies and procedures they published in place, and they're getting attacked as if it's the 1980s. And they're not even the ones who owned it then. They're like, no, we've done none of that. That all happened 20, 30 years
Yeah,
ago. And
yeah,
so, but the attack has cost 30% of their business to go down. So that's
yeah.
a huge chunk. So they're like looking at God going, okay, God, we know that this isn't our story long term, that there's a documentary that came out and other stuff that came out that's causing people to not buy our product. How are we supposed to reposition our faith? So
Mhm.
those are the kinds of foxes that you want to deal with in the sense of not that you want to deal with that, but the things that you can't plan for that require you to faith it through. But the stuff that you can plan for, like again, cash flow and structure and employees and whatever, that you plan as much of that as you can.
Yeah, and it's a daily, weekly, monthly battle, because the enemy would like to take us out as believers who are having impact for the kingdom and have us go bankrupt and have us be preoccupied and have us be in fear. This is where
Yeah,
he wants us, rather than where our position is. And I keep coming back to our identity, Sean. Our position is we are loved sons and daughters of God. No matter if we succeed or we fail, our position, we are loved sons and daughters of God. And as soon as we know that in our hearts, then it makes everything easier.
totally. Tabitha's writing some incredible stuff down just
Yeah.
as far as what she's thinking. I know I'm looking at someone said 20, Pam Lacey,
Yeah.
2020 to 2021 is
Yeah.
learning to pivot.
Yeah.
That's what she's, put out there as far as I think that's a prophetic statement. And I think those
Hmm.
of you who are in my generation would know the Friends series. And there's the time when they're trying to take a couch upstairs and it's just not going to fit. And Ross is screaming, pivot, pivot. And they just can't do it. That's how I think of pivoting this year is like, it's like, we're going to need God to make the
Hmm.
pivot happen. We just have to be available to it. And then God's going to show us how to fit in spaces that just don't normally fit.
Well, the cool
Which is,
thing, Sean, coming back to what you said, is if we're in this faith walk, then we have the ability to make changes that are for the good. And you said that in the Great Depression, businesses were grown, and even in the recession of 2007, 8, and 9, businesses started. People started businesses and been successful.
yeah,
And we've heard on our podcast and we've heard through the writing of this book all these comments of people who have started businesses or who have figured out how to weather businesses. And I think
yeah.
that we just need to have faith and trust and courage to go through it like this.
Well, you give me a lot of courage, Bob, just how you share, because I think there's something so soothing about you. I know our people who connect to us here also think so. And I want to again highlight Will has been putting some great scriptures on
Yeah.
YouTube. Thanks, Will. I know Bob already referred to that, but there's some good things. And then also Tabitha, thanks for such an incredible question today. And also,
Yeah.
let's go after that faith theme.
Yeah.
I would encourage you guys to pray into the faith theme in the midst of like look for areas of fear and ask God to give you faith. Ask Him to heal your unbelief or heal the places inside of you. I know I've been doing that. Just any place that has agreement with fear, God, drive
Hmm.
it out of me so I can
Yes.
walk in faith.
Lord.
And so let's go after it proactively versus when we're in crisis. Let's do it now so there's no crisis later in our faith. Well, Bob, we have come to the end already. Can you believe how fast that went?
That went really fast.
That
And
was so fast.
I hope this conversation helped. Please give us your comments and questions. You can go to bullsministries.com and click on the Ask Bob and Sean a question. And you can either give us an audio question or a written question. And we'd love to answer it either on our podcast or on our next live.
Absolutely. And if you guys want to get involved with Bulls Ministries more, we have an app and it has all of our free stuff listed there. So you can look at our YouTube series, our podcast that are the vodcast version, which is a video podcast. And there's also articles and all kinds of amazing connection points for us. And we have live events every month on our platform. And the nighttime version of those events is free. We have education all day typically, and then we have a nighttime free resource for you for Facebook. So please join us. You can look for our next live event as well as our next class, which is on prophetic evangelism, which is coming up with Cindy McGill, one of my favorites, who teaches on that. Or you could join my class, which is currently in progress, called Processing Prophetic Revelation. What do you do when you get a prophetic word? You could join us to hear that, and you could already watch the first class for free if you just go to our Facebook page or YouTube page or our app, and I think even on our Bulls website too. So Bob, thanks for being with us today. Thanks for hanging out.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.